I mean, I guess this would just tell me I can't go 3 days without looking at email.
Well, you can also just make it a practice when you go on vacation or you're going to be out of touch to put a automatic response. You know, I'll respond. I'm on vacation. I'll respond when I get back. That way you've met the obligation. You know, you've responded to them, and you'll give them a more thorough answer once time allows.
So what is driving the time requirement that we're introducing here?
Well, it's in the board chair responsibility.
And so that people feel like they're engaging properly with us and that we're getting back to them and not being forgotten. It's my understanding.
Yeah, sort of, you know, our big push for the past several years has been to increase our engagement with the community. And I don't know who suggested this one, but to me, it seemed like a good step in that direction to keep pushing ourselves to be better about engaging with folks. Because, you know, I think after 72 hours, after 3 days, if someone's written an email and not gotten a response, it begins to feel, you know, it's not being taken seriously. And I don't want folks to get that misperception.
I think if we're going to have a standard, it should be one standard and not a sliding standard. I don't know why we'd say 36 if the real standard is 72. So, but you know, as long as it's just a board chair, I didn't care. So, you know, I guess I do.
That's true. I mean, you know, you can always respond before 36 hours, right? It's not like you have to.
Usually I wouldn't want to wait even 36 if I'm on top of my game. I'm not going to sit around and wait to 36 just to do it. So.
Well, we could remove both and just, you know, in the board chair section, say within 72 hours, and also in the board general email within 72 hours.
That seems a little bit cleaner.
Okay. Ron, are you striking these all out, or do you want me to do the removal? Oh, you're muted.
You were there, I was letting you do it, but now that you're not, I'll do it.
Okay, got that. And then, so then, just to be clear, the second bullet regarding communication to a single board member, we're going to just add within 72 hours, but everything else will be the same as far as CCing board members and CCing chair, vice chair, superintendent, and BCCing other board members.
Well, we're taking out the may be, right? If we're up in here, will be responded to that member.
Yeah, we're turning this into shall.
Shall. Okay. Oh, I'm just so unskillful at this. I don't know why I'm doing this.
Listen, you're never going to get better until you do it, right? So good practice.
It comes in, it doesn't come in my, you know, oh well. So I'm responding to my member. Okay.
There, and then we can just delete the whole blue highlighted section.
Yeah, but this also has to be dropped out too. It has to say including or something. Hey, you can do it like that. I didn't know that. Yeah, it's smart. It told me.
Yeah. Okay.
We believe in learning for life.
Yeah, this is all part of my board professional development. How to do a simple Google.
It's great.
You've got a supportive group around you, so we applaud you.
At least you're muting yourselves when you're laughing at me, which is good.
Definitely not judging.
No.
Okay, so now at the bottom of the communication section is the suggestion in highlighted blue. A board member should notify the board that they have been interviewed for a news article, either print or live coverage. What are your thoughts around this one? Any thoughts?
It's new. I think it's a courtesy. I hadn't, until Rebecca brought it up, or what was it, last month or something, I hadn't thought about it as, I hadn't really thought about it. So it strikes me as a courtesy. I don't know that I've ever seen it be required in any other board working agreement, so we would be out a little ahead of everybody else if we did this. But I think it's fine. It's good because I'd like to know before the constituent asks me, what do you think of what Brandy said? And I said, I haven't seen what Brandy said. I didn't know Brandy said something. I don't, it'd be nice to know that that's might be coming.
I think what might make this section unworkable is the fact that there are elections and political campaigns. So how do you decide whether the interview that you're giving is for your political campaign and therefore should not necessarily have to let everyone know, or, vice versa?
Not sure why it still wouldn't be the same. If I'm running for re-election, which I'll have to do next spring, if somebody interviews me, that still reflects about the same on the board as if I'm interviewed in midterm, doesn't it? And other board members might still be asked to comment on it by an enterprising reporter. Our reporter hasn't been that enterprising mostly, but you never know. Is there some campaign strategy problem here? I'm not quite sure what the issue would be.
Well, it just seems a little overburdensome. Every time you send out a press release, you also have to tell the board, hey, I'm doing this.
Oh, I see.
I think it kind of goes along with the no surprise conversation that we've had in the past. At least that's what I intend when I send out communication that I've been interviewed.
And I wasn't reading it that, every time one of us puts out a communication for a campaign or something that we would, need to advise every time we post on Facebook. But anytime we're approached for an interview, we'll let folks know that that's happened. This seems like a good one to me, particularly because there are so many more news outlets now. It's not just the Oregonian and the Graphic. There are multiple different news sources that folks could contact us, and it'd be good to know when that happens.
Yeah, I think it's a courtesy for the rest of the board.
This does say an interview, so by its terms, it doesn't apply to something that the board member generates themselves.
Should we add anything in there? Because right now it just says that a board member should notify the board that they've been interviewed. Should we put anything in there like prior to interview publication or within 72 hours? That seems like a good number, or just any kind of
Well,
box.
if it's just a courtesy, I think what we have there is sufficient.
I agree. I think at this point, it's designed to not put other board members in a bad spot and having to respond immediately to something they haven't seen. So I this is a new expectation, and I'd like to just run it as leave it to the courtesy of the board member until we see if that doesn't work.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that one? Should we move on? Good. All right. I just noticed the time, so.
Yeah, this is a good start.
Yeah. Okay. So effective meetings. The highlighted blue, I'd like to underline the portion of the agreement where the board member should contact the superintendent, board chair, any points of clarification, and explain all major concerns prior to the meeting. So that refers to the first bullet there that says board members should share ideas about new programs and new directions with superintendent and chair before presenting them publicly. The blue goes on to say, I wonder if there is a need for language needed to state if this hasn't been done, the board chair has the responsibility to direct the board member to stop and refer them to this direction prior to continuing their statement in the meeting. It's not to shut up dissent, but to help guide it to better understanding and present to come to an agreement. So collaborative and collective. So there's a couple of language suggestions. Are there thoughts on those? Rebecca, did you get a chance to read the comments that Ron added a little bit ago?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I'll read that one aloud. Board members with ideas about new programs and new directions will coordinate with the superintendent and the board chair to get them on the agenda for discussion at a time that fits best with other board business. And so staff and other board members can prepare. A board
Right.
member may briefly mention ideas for new programs or directions in a board meeting without giving advance notice, but they will not be discussed without opportunity for coordination and preparation.
Sounds good.
Yeah, Ron's is the better language, I think. The language above it is so broad that it would basically eliminate the ability to ask questions if you hadn't sent those questions ahead of time.
Ron, in the, let's see, 1, 2, 3.
Where
the
you're
fourth
marking.
line, it says, and so staff. So can we add so that staff?
No, the word that does nothing in that sentence. You just stumbled into a mine pit, something.
I'm good at taking other words out. Now I got to add some in, all right?
But the word that almost, I've been
Okay.
fighting that battle for 30 years. I use the word that there, right? But sometimes we just put it in there as a pause. And
You feel passionately that there should not be a that after the so.
I've been working myself up over this for 35 years. So
I'm not that committed to it. It's
Yeah.
fine. Does
Doesn't-
anybody have any other thoughts on the addition of that and the language around it? No? Okay. All right, so we can take out Ron, the blue and the green and add yours.
oh, thank you.
Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3. There's the now fourth one down. The suggestion board members will read materials and seek clarification and information from the superintendent or board chair. Right now it says prior. The suggestion is to change it to before. And then it goes on to say the board meeting and explain all major concerns. The suggestion to change major to significant. Any thoughts on those changes?
I'm fine with either language.
Okay.
Good. I think significant is a slightly lower threshold in theory. So that everything that is significant is stuff that we should know it's coming. You know, and before takes out one word. Well, I don't think it takes out any letters. I might take one letter out. So it's worth it, yeah.
It is, right? We're shortening it. And we didn't put that pesky that in there, so that's okay. Okay, and then let's see, the final changes, we all work collectively for the benefit of students to we all work collectively to benefit students. Any thoughts on that one?
I'm sorry, what was the original language?
The original one is right above it. So it says we all work collectively for the benefit of students. And this one says we all work collectively to benefit students. No? Good? Everyone okay with it? All right.
We just take out this whole line because it's the same.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
All right. Good job, team. You got 8 minutes before the start of the meeting, except for Ron, because he's got to finish editing.
I did. What else was I going to do?
Did you? Okay.
Oh, I'm not for that.
Well, I'm saying we could clean it up so that it's like actually,
Oh, I don't.
because we're voting on this in the meeting.
You want a cleaned up copy? I don't actually know how to clean it up, so. I don't
So Ron, I think you're only in the ability to make suggestions. So you've made suggestions to the document. So I think, Brandy, if you're the owner of the document, you may have to just go in and hit the check box on all of those, and then that will make those go away and make them so. You're welcome.
Okay. Oops, let me get the rest of these.
Since this is a working agreement between the superintendent and the board, what could we hear from the superintendent?
Well,
Sure.
it looks like, thank you, Rebecca. A lot of your changes tonight were actually really about what was happening between the board members. I think that the other things that we have had in there in the past were things that I think worked relatively well for us. Communications before. Many of you, if you have questions about something that's in the packet, that really helps us when you ask us ahead of time because we can have the answers prepared for you. So, we'll be able to go through those. I think the the other communications pieces about the no surprises and I the rest of those things we worked fairly hard on putting them together before. So by and large, I'm good with the superintendent parts. So I was glad to see you guys finish up the board parts tonight.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to work on this for the next 6 minutes, but if anybody needs to get up, get a glass of water or whatever, I'll see everyone back in 5 minutes now, 7 o'clock. Okay, I think we're all back. Wait, 1, 2, 3. Yes, we're all here. All right, excellent. I will call to order this board meeting of the Newberg School District Board of Directors. We're now in session. Rebecca has graciously volunteered to do the flag salute for us tonight. So if you would please mute your microphone so we are not all talking over each other, that would be awesome.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, so tonight's agenda, we'll start off like we always do, public comment, board and superintendent comment, move into the consent agenda. We have a few different reports and presentations tonight. There's
Brandy, I realized one thing I forgot to let you know. ODE did not send us the SIA grant agreement form yet, so we can remove that from the agenda because we have nothing to approve from them.
Okay, I wondered what was going on with that. Thank you for the update. Under reports and presentations, it's National Bullying Prevention Month, so I will read a proclamation. We'll get a bond update from the district, Greg and Joe, and also from the PAC, Lydia and AJ. And then Jillian is here to give us a migrant school ELL report. We'll take a quick break. Then we'll discuss Spanish translation services for board meetings, our superintendent and board working agreement, and then possible professional development topics for the board. So not quite as heavy as last time, but still a robust agenda. Okay, so let's start off with public comment. My understanding there's 2 tonight, right, Greg? Yep, okay. So let's go ahead and start with Angela. And then after Angela, we will have Amy.
I'm not seeing Angela by name. Hang on a moment.
Well, we could always start with Amy.
So Brandy, are we running the 3 or the 5 minute?
Tonight we could do 5 because there's only 2. Do you have your cards?
Yeah.
Thanks.
We have one call in. I'm trying to see if that is her number, but I don't want to let them in without knowing for sure that's correct.
Okay. Should we ask Amy first?
Yes, we could do that. All right, I will put her on there.
I'll wait till she comes over so she can hear us. I don't know if people can hear in the meantime. Hi, Amy.
Hi, thank you.
Yep, I'm going to quickly do my little spiel, just a reminder to everyone giving public comments tonight. We'll limit them to 5 minutes, and Ron will be the timekeeper for us. So when you see the time prompts up there, just pay attention to that. And we love public engagement, and public comment serves the board very well. So we appreciate everyone coming out tonight. Again, we can't talk about personnel within the district, and please refrain from attacking character and keep it to people's actions. Thank you. Go ahead, Amy.
Thank you. I would like to share my appreciation to Dr. Morlock for the response made regarding the racist incident via the Google Meets and our board's passage of the resolution to condemn racism and committing to being an anti-racist school district. I see this response and resolution to being an anti-racist school district in providing safety for both our BIPOC and white students. A safe learning environment provides clarity of our roles and responsibilities, which are shared. In the case of the racist incident via Google Meets, anti-racist actions were made by a largely white leadership in naming the incident, proclaiming actions to be damaging and unsafe, along with a relational commitment to upholding anti-racism. And I thank you deeply for this. Policies to accompany the resolution will support transparency and clarity. I'd also like to thank teachers for the work they are doing by engaging with students and families through our comprehensive distance learning. My children are happy to be on the online meetings and are thriving because of their connections. And I'm greatly appreciative of all the work that's being done. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy, for joining us tonight. Do we have any clarity, Angela's?
Yeah, Yes, we have Angela. She was having a technical problem and she is back on. So I'm
Perfect.
loading her.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Angela. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay. I just want to thank you first for letting me join you tonight to make my public comment. I'm showing up tonight as a school district employee, go Newberg Tigers, a parent in the district, go Edward Eagles, and a current grad student who is hoping to be a school counselor in our district one day. I myself graduated from Newberg High School, and I am thankful that I get to continue to be a part of this community. I want to thank the board for passing the anti-racist resolution and passing the updates to the Student Code of Conduct, which included additions about hate symbols and bias incidences. As you know, we had horrible racial instances that happened in our learning spaces last week. These events show me that there is continued anti-racism work that needs to be done in our district. I am feeling sad and angry for our Black, Indigenous students of color who had to experience blatant hate in their classrooms. My guess is it's probably not the first time. I don't want to believe that any person could be so hateful towards another, yet they can, and we saw it happen. In Monique Morris's book, Push Out, The Criminalization of Black Girls in Schools, she talks about how if educational institutes are not intentional learning organizations that seek to evolve through a quest for knowledge and social change, they end up churning out individuals who will maintain the status quo, including the status quo of systematic racism. My wondering tonight is how can Newberg School District move from a district doing damage control to becoming a district that churns out socially justice-minded, equity-seeking, compassionate students? How can we help our students see the value in every single peer and celebrate the ways they are unique? How can we prepare our students for the world, equipped with the reality of the honest history of our country? This is big work, and I know it is easy for me to ask these big, wondering questions. And I am committed as part of this community to do this hard work, as I know others are too. I want to challenge our school board to continue having conversations around anti-racism work and to continue to look at our policies and how they might better reflect outcomes of equality. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, for joining us and for your comments. Okay, let's move into board comments. I'll just go and call you all if you don't mind. And if you have a comment, great. If you don't, that's okay too. Let's see, Bob, do you have any comments this evening?
Yes, I just wanted to remind everybody that as we get deeper into COVID, it's easy to feel like it's going to last forever. And to just remember that this is temporary. And it's something that we've got a lot of folks working to get us through it as smoothly as is possible. You know, there was a little bit of a discussion on Facebook about the bond, and somebody made a comment that, kids aren't in the buildings, we don't need to do a bond. And, I just tried to remind the person that that this is temporary, this is not permanent, and that our kids are going to be back in class, and they're going to need modern, well-maintained facilities. And so I want to encourage folks to learn more and vote for the bond. And I also want folks to just remember that we will get onto the other side of this COVID.
Let's see, Brian, do you have any comments this evening?
I do not.
Okay, Rebecca, do you have any comments?
I have a couple of things to share. Last week, I was able to listen into the Rotary noon meeting where Joe and Brandy were able to present the bond to the Rotarians. And again, it was a great presentation, and I appreciate all the hard work both of you are doing on behalf of the school district. And during that meeting, it was quite interesting. Our dog was barking and I had to go outside to get the dog. And there was Nikki Fowler at my picket gate trying to deliver food for our neighborhood child that lives next door. And that made me feel very proud of the work the food service people are doing for the children in the school district. And it was great to see Nikki. And it's Friday, I had the chance to do a implicit bias training for 3 hours, and by Dr. Brian Marks. I think he was the guy who spoke at last year's yearly conference for OSBA. And it was very informative, and I would implore all board members to sign up for his next training. It's going to be an open forum, but it was very worthwhile. And finally, I'd like to say that October is Blindness Awareness Month. And the reason I bring this up to the school board meeting is that Louis Braille was a young man totally blinded by an accident. By the time he was 5, he went to a special school for the blind in Paris when he was 10. And at the age of 15, he first figured out the first Braille system for reading for people with blindness. And it brings the point that the bond is important for people, for our children who have disabilities, for the revamping or the inclusion of the ADA solutions going to be done for our school children in our school buildings, and for the STEM program that will encourage our young thinkers to find new ways to help solve problems. And as a person with disabilities, I appreciate our school district working through hurdles to make it in all the education adaptable and accessible to all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And thank you, Nikki, for delivering meals too. It's awesome. Let's see, Dave, do you have any comments for tonight?
Yeah, I just had a couple. I'd like us to start the discussion of, leading by example, of bringing our school board meetings back in person. I have seen almost all of you guys at something around town, whether it's Safeway, Fred Meyer's, a restaurant. I feel like it's time for us to look at this. If somebody's in a real precarious position, they can, with a pre-existing condition, they could still Zoom. But I think as leading our district, we have so many things to work on. I think it's something we should be starting that conversation. I think the Newberg City Council is, and I think it's time for us to start looking at that. The numbers show that we're pretty big into data. The data shows that we're okay if we wear masks, socially distance, and we have a big boardroom to do that in. So I think that was my first one. The second one's more maybe directed just in general. How tough are our teachers having it right now? I'm hearing a lot that it's tough. And so, as a board or whatever we can do, like what Nikki was doing, delivering that, and encourage Rebecca, maybe instead of just a proclamation or something like that's great. Maybe something more tangible as a board we could do for our staff. I don't know what that would be. And I know that's more Joe's thing, but there's a lot of hurting staff out there. They're exhausted. They're tired too. And so maybe everybody could just creatively think about that between now and the next board meeting. Maybe it's as simple as us writing notes to staff or something. I don't know, but there's a lot of tired staff out there. I'm sure Joe's aware of that. So anyway, that was my 2 comments.
Yeah, thank you. Ron, do you have any comments this evening?
Yeah, I have one. Last meeting, Joe mentioned that we have a cap. I think it was 3% or something of our students that could transfer to an external online academy. I think that was right. I forgot to go back and check and make sure I had that precisely right. I didn't actually catch that when it went through, and I only didn't notice it. I didn't notice it until I was reading the minutes earlier today. So I didn't have a chance to ask Joe about this in advance. So I'm just raising this briefly. I think at some future meeting, I'd like to hear an explanation for why we even have a cap. I don't believe in general that we should hold our students captive, that if they or their families prefer to find other educational resources, they should be free to do so. So I'd like to make sure I understand why we have that cap at some point, and if the reasons aren't outstanding, then I'd like us to consider removing that cap. But I'm just raising that now, and at some point in the future, I'd like to see that on our agenda.
Okay. Inez, do you have any comments tonight?
I do, a few. So going along, I wanted to comment about the racist incident as well. I'm very proud of how the district responded, but the incident itself shows that this work is important and needed. I also wanted to mention that even OSBA did release that they adopted a temporary administrative rule that now districts across the state will have to have something in place prior to or by January 1st of 2021, because symbols of hate should not be allowed. And I just wanted to highlight that, that I'm proud that we approved some of that language in the code of conduct already. And you know, we're doing our work as best we can. So also, I was at the parent Latinx parent meeting, and you know, I want to shout out Mardo and Silvia for doing a great job about talking up the bond and sharing with the community what the bond is going to do for our students, and also, you know, hearing their struggles as what is distance learning for parents whose native language is not English. So everybody's struggling. And I do think that because COVID is temporary, we will need those buildings to be up to par and safe for our students. So with that, today being the last day to register to vote, if anybody hasn't, please do so. Okay.
Thank you for highlighting Mardo and Sylvia. I approached them when I recognized I couldn't attend that meeting, and I also don't speak Spanish. And they volunteered, jumped right in, and took it away. And it is awesome. It's a reminder that we have a lot of people in this community who feel passionate about helping out and serving our kids. So yes, thank you to them. Okay, Joe, you're up.
All right. Thank you. I have several little updates, so I'll just launch right in. I want to start off by acknowledging the racist incident that we did have at the high school, where a person joined a class anonymously used racial and violent language targeting students of color in that class. Although the teacher was able to remove them quickly, it did happen again. That teacher did follow protocol and then followed up. It did cause trauma, of course, for kids who were in the class, whether they were students of color or not, and students across the district. Although we did have protocols, and we still do have protocols in place to mitigate the opportunity, we're taking additional steps, as I outlined in a few different communications. We're changing the way that we do some logins. It does take a bit more effort to get everybody in, but we're continuing to learn and figure out how to make it as secure as possible, as well as make it accessible, so we don't run into the other issue of making it impossible for students to connect. Additionally, I think it highlights again the need for training, not just in the prevention, but in the aftermath of such an event. You know, sometimes it's hard to have those really hard conversations with students after an event like that happens. So we're working on the kind of training for us to be able to process through that, because That's a very hard thing for a lot of kids in that class, not just the students of color, especially them, but also other students who may have been exposed to that. So we're sorry that happened. We're continuing to work on it. I do want to highlight the work of our tech group, working directly with our principals to figure out the next steps, and then getting teachers in to try it out so we can get things out the door the day of the event. And then we were ready to go. In about 36 hours, we had a full solution to push out the door. We are continuing our planning work for the limited in-person instruction and other limits for K3 and CTE. This is primarily, at least the limited in-person is about supporting students who are experiencing disability, could be English learners. CTE stuff, of course, is for hands-on demonstration of skills, but it's not for full instruction. So I think that there sometimes is a misunderstanding of what the limited in-person is, and it's about, there are certain things that you can't just make up and do in the air at home. You actually have to, use a tool to show that. But it's not meant to replace the instruction. It's also something that cannot be required as part of the class grade or expectations, because we have certain students who may not be able to come in. So we're still working on that. We are forming some work teams with multiple groups of employees across the district, so we can start to look at the next steps for some kind of limited instruction. Unfortunately, our case rates in Yamhill County went the other direction. So after a couple of weeks of actually getting below that, the fewer than 30, we were back up quite a bit. So we actually had spent, I think it was September 6th, we were at about 39, we went to 29, then we went to 19, and then in the week of the 27th of September, we went back up to 45, and then to 58, and case rates of 7.3 and 7.7. So our metrics did a complete U-turn and went the other direction. Just as a reminder, we have to have, that needs to be, for us to come back fully, it needs to be fewer than 10 cases per 100,000 for 3 consecutive weeks. So we made it 2 weeks, and now we've got 2 weeks going the other way. So it starts off the counter at 0. If we had fewer than 30 per 100,000, that would allow a kindergarten through 3rd grade return. We did again make it 2 weeks, but after that, of course, now we're still waiting for that to come back down. So our numbers in Yamhill and across the state, of course, are all going up, both in case rate and in test positivity rate. So we're seeing a larger surge for that, and it will be further complicated, of course, by flu season, when symptoms will be similar, and it will be difficult to determine without actually getting more and more tests available for people. So let's see. Finally, I think that's 1, 2, 3. Yes. So I just wanted to highlight again, we are at the end or nearing the end of Hispanic Heritage Month. And a little known fact, actually, this was new to me when I learned it, that it actually started out as Hispanic Heritage Week. It was signed into law by President Lyndon Johnson in 1968. And then in 1988, the week was actually expanded to a month and signed into law by President Ronald Reagan. September 15th was chosen as the starting point for the month because it's the anniversary of the independence of 5 Hispanic countries, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua, who all declared independence in 1821. Also, Mexico's Independence Day is September 16th, not Cinco de Mayo, for all of you playing along at home. That is the Battle of Puebla, something totally different. So September 16th is Mexico's Independence Day. For Chile, it's September 18th. For Belize, it's September 21st. So they chose this month because it's a very important month across there. As I did last time, I'd like to highlight just another influential and important Latinx person in these final days of Hispanic Heritage Month for 2020. Sonia Maria Sotomayor. She was nominated by President Barack Obama on May 26, 2009, and has served since August of that year. Sotomayor is the first Hispanic and Latina member of the court. She was born in the Bronx, New York City. Her parents were born in Puerto Rico. Her father died when she was 9, and she was raised by her mother in the housing projects of the Bronx. She graduated summa cum laude from Princeton University in 1976 and received her Juris Doctor from Yale Law School in 79. Sotomayor has been influential in decisions about civil rights, property rights, and First, Second, and Fourth Amendment rights. She's won numerous awards and received several honorary degrees from prestigious universities. She's also written a memoir about her early life, which she published in both English and Spanish, that was released on the same day. She's always been proud of her ethnic identity, saying in 1996, "Although I am an American, love my country, and could achieve its opportunity of succeeding at anything I worked for, I have also have a Latina soul and heart with the magic that carries." So just wanted to celebrate her. She's been an influential person, and I wish her very well. And that's all I have for you tonight.
Awesome, Joe. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, let's move on to our consent agenda. I would like to recognize Austin Family Foundation for their donation of $50,000 for the CTE at home kits. That is amazing. Thank you to the Austin Family Foundation for that generous donation. With that, I would entertain a motion.
I move that the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, the second in a motion, is there discussion? No? Anybody looking to buy a used Chevy pickup truck? I'm just kidding. All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, passes unanimously.
Can I ask what those kits are?
The CTE at home kits?
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe, do you have any idea?
If you don't know right off, that's fine. It's just curious.
I've got Dr. Neff here available.
Yeah, so the CTE at home kits are for all of our different CTE courses at the high school. So, Matt Miller in his integrated design studio class was able to put together some kits where, kids can do these hands-on projects. He didn't actually send tools home with them, I don't believe, but it was some little like design projects related to what they're hoping to do on a larger scale later on, hopefully. We also sent home kits for a couple other courses. I could maybe even follow up with an email to you all with some of the details on that. There's some cool things in there, but I lack knowledge of those details off the top of my head.
That'd be great. Just something like that outside, just so we can see. I'm curious. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Let's move on to our reports and presentations. The first is the Anti-Bullying Proclamation. I will go ahead and read that. Whereas bullying is physical, verbal, sexual, or emotional harm or intimidation intentionally directed at a person or group of people. And whereas bullying occurs in neighborhoods, playgrounds, schools, and through technology, such as the internet and cell phones. And whereas various researchers have concluded that bullying is the most common form of violence affecting millions of American children and adolescents annually. And whereas thousands of Oregon children and adolescents are affected by bullying annually. And whereas targets of bullying are more likely to acquire physical, emotional, and learning problems, and students who are repeatedly bullied often fear such activities as riding the bus, going to school, and attending community activities. And whereas children who bully are at a greater risk of engaging in more serious violent behaviors. And whereas children who witness bullying often feel less secure, more fearful, and intimidated. Now, therefore, the Newberg School District Board of Directors does hereby proclaim October as National Bullying Prevention Month and hereby commit to engage in a variety of awareness and prevention activities designed to make our schools safer for all children and adolescents. Okay. Next up, we have a bond update from Dr. Morlock and Greg. Are you two ready? Okay.
We are, and this will be just a short item I wanted to highlight. So a couple of you mentioned some of the meetings that both Chair Penner and I have been at together or separately. I think it was 7 meetings last week that we attended with Rotaries and Soroptimist and Kiwanis and the Latinx group, although Mardo and Silvia did such a great job that we just sat and listened to them go through it and answer all kinds of great questions. So they were really awesome, and I was glad to that they would jump in to do that for us. So we had lots of those groups. I do also want to highlight that on the calendar, we do have an evening community Zoom bond info session coming up on Monday, the 19th at 7 p.m. So we will get more information out to everybody, but I just wanted people to be aware we'll have a Zoom session to give out some information and then answer any questions that come along. As a reminder, the work that I myself do or any of the staff does here is, and it needs to be purely informational. And so that's what the presentation parts that I always do. You as board members and community members, of course, can advocate and talk about those things. So the differential is still set up that way. So just lots of presentations out to groups, talking with folks, answering emails, and then working with our consultants. And then I'm going to hand it over to Greg to talk about the next parts of this.
Yeah, you hopefully have seen a couple of things. There was a mailing that went out to all people in the Newberg district last week that covered the bond and got information out. So that process is rolling. Right Communications is our consulting company working on that, and they got that out for us and are also working on some short digital video ads that will go on social media in different places. And Larry Hampton, our own voice of the Tigers, was the one who did the voiceover for that, for a couple of those videos that they'll be putting together. So that's a fun thing. I had a chance to talk with the Newberg Graphic today again about the bond with the interview, and tomorrow Joe and I believe Brandy are meeting with the Newberg Graphic editorial board to, as they ask questions about that, to see if they consider whether endorsing the bond, whether they will endorse the bond. So that's another process that's going on. I think that that's everything that I can think of that's happening at the moment.
Great. Does the board want to ask questions on the bond in general at the end of Lydia and AJ's presentation, or would you like to have any questions for just Joe and Greg at this point? No? Okay, let's wait till the end, and if questions come up, all four will be available. Okay, Lydia and AJ, you all are up.
Hello.
Good evening.
Well, thank you guys for having us back. So we've been busy reaching out to community members, businesses, and organizations to share information about the bond measure and getting yard signs out in as many local businesses and residences that we can. It's not too late to get a yard sign. We still have plenty. You can go to voteyesfornps.org to donate and sign up for a yard sign. This weekend, we got some banners and large signs that came in. And let me see. There we go. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, this is a large sign that we put behind Safeway in an empty lot that the owner gave us permission to put there. And then this is our banners, and this one is up at Ray's Produce. And let's see. Okay. And on Saturday, we're going to be putting out some door hangers on some residences' doors. So we're looking for
We're looking for volunteers. So if you would like to come hang some door hangers with us, we're going to have some packs of them together, and we've got some lists of addresses that we're going to be targeting.
portion of our activities.
Sorry, Lydia, you cut out there for a second, so
Oh.
AJ took over for a second, but you're back. So
Okay,
keep going.
well, I have no idea at what point I cut out, but how far did you get, AJ?
I asked if they would like to come help hang door hangers with us.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah, do you want to go ahead and talk about social media? Oh, go ahead, Ron.
I was going to ask AJ where either one of you, where we need to be and when on Saturday to get those. And how do we coordinate to
Yeah.
make sure?
I'm gonna have them at my house, and on Friday, I'll send an email out to everyone who said that they will do it. And Friday, you can come get your list and your door hangers from me, and then you can distribute them on your own time on the weekends. Yeah, AJ, do you want to talk about social media?
We are continuing to have a good response on social media. A lot of folks are learning about the bond. If we have questions, it's usually about the ins and outs of how a bond works. Again, so there's not been any kind of pushback. And we've really appreciated the responses that board members have provided with specific facts about cost and why we are doing this right now. Why a bond in 2020, right, Brandy? So. And then we are also looking at doing some more targeted social media campaigns closer to Election Day.
And Brandy has been doing a great job doing presentations with Joe, which will continue to happen moving forward. And the response has been generally favorable for that. We're focusing a little bit more on getting the word out in Dundee, since the bond has such a big portion of the package benefiting the Dundee students. Ron has been helpful so far with that. That's pretty much what we've been up to. Going forward, we're still trying to get out a few more larger signs and banners, and we still have some yard signs to give out. In the door hangers, and then we have a postcard that will be coming out towards the end of this week, so hopefully people will start to receive that in the mail before too long.
And we're still collecting some statements of support to share on social media, as well as getting some folks to write letters to the editor, to the graphic. And everyone's been really positive about that, so that's encouraging.
Great. Are there questions from the board regarding the bond?
I want to thank you for what you're doing for our students. What else can the board members do to support you, to support this effort?
Yeah, in the immediate, if you have any friends or family that you can send our way to get feet on the street for this weekend, that would be, I think, the most beneficial to us. Or if you have any connection to a place that we could put a larger sign, we still have a couple of those to put out.
Okay.
Yeah, the more people, many hands make light work. And at this point, it's going to be a few hands doing a lot of work this weekend. So anytime that anybody in our attendees, in our audience, or board members have to donate a little time and effort this weekend will be very much appreciated.
You mentioned that most of the response has been positive. Has there been any sort of clear theme from the people who are hesitant or opposed about what the issues are for them?
The thing that we've run into the most is just people not knowing that the bond exists. And so we have, I would say that's been our biggest thing, is people saying, oh, I didn't even know that this was happening. And so at least on our end, that's what we've gotten the most feedback for, I would say.
And there's some about this is going to increase taxes, which technically there's an increase. But then when you show the historic factors and where we lay compared to all of the other school districts, that seems to resolve a lot of those questions.
Are there any other questions from the board? Okay, well, thank you very much, Lydia and AJ, and to everybody on the PAC, because everybody's a volunteer. And again, maybe that's the theme of this week's meeting, is just community support for our schools. It's been, it's exhausting, but it's also incredibly heartwarming. So thank you so much for your time.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
And thank you, Joe and Greg, because I know you guys are always working around the clock. So it just kind of goes without saying, but we appreciate you. Okay, next up, we've got Jillian and our Migrant Summer School ELL report.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm excited to present about our results from our Migrant Title I Summer School this year. I've had the opportunity to be able to support Migrant Title I summer school the last several years. And this year, with no exception, presented its own opportunities, as it does every year. A little bit of background on summer school is that we went back and forth between whether or not we were going to be in a hybrid or online only scenario. And that decision was really made like a week before school started. So we had a lot of opportunity to collect information and figure out our plans to kind of give it a go after distance learning occurred last spring. So with that, I will present a little overview of summer school and how it went. And then I will also discuss the Oregon English Learners Report as well at the end of the presentation. Hey, can you all see my screen?
Yes, looks good.
Excellent. So just a reminder, Migrant Title I Summer School serves students K-12. We also have our preschool students that also attend Migrant Summer School. So if you qualify as a student based on your migrant status, our students that are migrant automatically qualify into summer school. It is grant funded through our Migrant Summer School grant that we received through the WESD. And then we also have Title I students participating, and our Title I students qualify based on assessment and test score data from the previous school year. So we serve typically in a typical year, 3-year-olds through 12th graders. This year, we ended up only serving our 4-year-olds through 12th graders in the online hybrid experience that we had. So a little background on that piece. Leading into that, this year, we had 120 students that are multilingual learners. So these are students that are acquiring English. We had 21 students with special needs. We also had, as part of our community, 12 staff members of color and 13 bilingual staff members. So we served 210 students this summer, P4, preschool 4 through grade 12. In a typical summer school year, we serve between 300 and 400 students. So our enrollment was down a bit due to COVID, and I'll get into it a little bit later, but our secondary students had a lower participation rate than we've seen in the past. We this year had 15 classrooms, which is a little bit larger than what we actually have. So it provided us an opportunity to have a smaller group size. We had 6 classrooms that were dual language classrooms. So students are learning in both English and Spanish. Students would be in a dual language classroom as part of their ongoing programming. So if they were in a dual language classroom during the regular school year, they're also in a dual language classroom during summer school. We had 7 English medium classrooms. So these are classrooms where students are only learning in English. And these are our students who might receive English language development services and may not. So quite a few different classrooms. And then we had some independent study experience as well, because I'm noticing I have 15 classrooms and I only have 13 that I've broken out. So we also had partnered with our high school for summer school. Some years our migrant students that are at the high school level have their own summer school experience, and other years we're able to collaborate and partner. So we also had that opportunity, which did include some 8th graders receiving credit accrual instead of credit recovery. So that was really exciting as well. At the start of summer school, we tried to figure out how are we going to engage our students and families, because we know that that was really difficult to achieve in the online scenario we had last spring. Typically, as part of summer school, we offer enrichment opportunities that students might not normally experience. So summer school typically focuses on creating a lot of equity and access for our students. So this year we partnered with the Cultural Center, and they created a fantastic art box for all of our students that was totally self-contained with 10 different art projects and all of the materials and resources that students would need to complete the projects. It also had a manual that was in both English and Spanish, and there were also videos that the Cultural Center created for us as a how-to step-by-step in terms of creating the art projects. So that was something that was really exciting for our families that they could engage with as well. In addition to the art boxes, we sent home weekly learning kits that contained lots of different types of books, math manipulatives, and then some basic school supplies like whiteboards, dry erase markers, composition books, things that we thought students might need for at-home learning in the fall. So our staff members did deliver these each week, which I know is a little bit different than what we're doing now. But it was really a way that we were able to connect with our community and really engage them in their online learning. So students would learn online, but then they would get offline and go utilize the components of their learning kits to continue their learning, and then come back the next day and share what they did online. Our 8th through 12th graders, as I had previously mentioned, also worked towards earning credit. So we had our high schoolers who were doing credit recovery, and then we had 8th grade students who were doing credit accrual to get ahead on their electives before they even start their 9th grade year. So this year we had a little bit lower number. 10 students earned high school credits. Typically, it's in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 students that are earning high school credits, but we found that many of our students this year had to go to work to support their families. So accessing summer school became a challenge. We figured that out partway through our experience and adjusted some support for evening and weekend hours. But that was really one of the barriers that our secondary students faced, was being at work all day. Some of our students came online really late at night, and you could see the times that they were turning in their assignments was quite late. So we were really trying to problem solve, how do we support our students that really have some unique needs? So that's definitely, as we move forward to the future, as we plan for further instruction, if we are in an online scenario, that will be one of our targets, is how to better engage our secondary students when they're online, and then also working to support their families. In terms of growth this summer, we had experienced 100% reading growth for the first time ever. So I'm really excited to share all that with you. That's measured with using DIBELS K5, and then we had some teacher-created assessments for our middle school students. The high school students are not included in this because they're accruing credits. So at the beginning of summer school, students do a pre-test, and at the end they have a post-test, and then we measure the gains. Our goal every year in terms of increasing student achievement is a 7% increase. So with all students increasing in reading growth, really was exciting because it's the first time it's happened. So I'm really excited to share that with you. We also had 98% math growth, which again is higher than what we usually experience. So we've really discovered that our students, particularly K6, had a very high engagement level of summer school this year. In terms of our offerings, and the online sessions that we had, they were both live and asynchronous. And we also had the small group support. So it was really effective, which leads me to my next slide that there were some questions on. In Region 16, which we are a member of with the Willamette ESD, Region 16 serves 30 districts, and we were one of the only programs to show growth in summer school this year. So I really want to celebrate all of the teachers that we had working in summer school, and all of our families and our students that participated in summer school, because we were one of the only districts to be able to show growth and make that impact and difference to our students and their learning. So that was really exciting for us. And then I'm going to kind of transition now to the English Learner Report. So this report is required by law, that was passed a few years ago. And this report ODE puts together every year. The report is 3 years behind. So you will find in this report information and data from 2018-19 school year. Last year I presented on this report, and I kind of did a compare and contrast of what the report was showing statewide in terms of our English learners, and then what we saw here locally in Newberg. Due to COVID and some of our limited assessment experiences last spring, we don't quite have as much data as we had in the past. So I'm not going to do that compare and contrast, but I do want to let you know that the report is out, and it does feature 2018-19 data. In the report, you can find financial information, the objectives and needs of students that are eligible for the English Learner Program, as well as their demographics, kind of like a snapshot of what English learners look like across the state. So there's a wide variety of language. A few districts have up to 60 different languages. Currently, our district is at 39 different home languages for students that we serve. And we also have some assessment information that I can share about our ELPA, because we did do the ELPA last year. So the ELPA is the English Language Proficiency Assessment. This assessment is what determines a student's English language proficiency that receives English language development services. And that was one of the only state assessments that was able to be completed before we paused for our in-person learning due to COVID. This assessment starts in February, so we really squeaked in the first 3 or 4 weeks of February that opportunity to assess students. And what we found is that our scores remained pretty flat. So we don't show a lot of growth in our English learner program over the last several years. I would say it's been really flat. We have about 10% of our English learners showing proficiency each year. And for the last 3 or 4 years, it has really stayed at that 10%. So basically 10% of our ELs are becoming proficient each year. So that kind of brings us to some information that I did want to share with you, in that we are transitioning our English learner program, which we are calling our multilingual learner program, to honor students that are bilingual and trilingual. So right now, we have a couple of different models happening. In the past, all students that were identified as needing English language development support services were pulled out of their class at the elementary level during non-core instruction times. At the middle school and high school level, they received an additional, not an additional, but they would have a class period that was English language development. So what we're transitioning to this year, due to this elementary schedule, we weren't able to move to co-teaching. So we are still at a pull-out program, but what we're transitioning to is that co-teaching model where the ELD teacher or the specialist would come into the general education classroom, and they would co-teach, co-plan, and do that co-instruction together, so that students are learning language and acquiring language inside of content, and it's not being learned, it's not happening in isolation, so that they can better transfer their language acquisition directly to the content and instruction that they're learning in their classroom. So we're in the transition mode of that in our program within Newberg. And I say that because our middle schools are currently working in co-taught instruction. So for our students that are not in a dual language program, they are receiving co-taught services in their ELA classroom. So in their English classroom, they have 2 teachers that are providing them support. If we have students in a dual language classroom at the middle school, their English learner instruction is integrated. So their dual language teacher is the English language development teacher as well. So they're integrating that instruction into their content. Whereas at the elementary level, we're still at pullout due to some scheduling difficulties this year with COVID. One of our grade levels at the elementary level, our 5th grade, is transitioning to integrated English language development. So they are doing their own English language development in their classroom with some support and facilitation from our English language development specialists. And the high school is kind of a hybrid model. So we have our English language specialist there working with co-teaching our 9th grade students. And then they also have a special class for English language development in their schedule as well. This is primarily due to the schedule again with COVID. English language arts are offered 2 days a week at the high school. So English language development services are required for every student contact day. So for the days that students do not have English language arts, they're receiving English language development class. One of the biggest reasons why we want to transition to the co-taught model or the integrated model is to create equity and access for our students that are language learners so that they can access electives and other opportunities and that those classes aren't taken up by ELD. Another big reason why we're transitioning to this model is because our data is flat. Our students aren't progressing at a rate we'd like to see. And so this is shown in the last, I would say probably decade, to really be an effective model if students are not participating in a dual language program and acquiring Spanish and English, that integrating to co-taught instruction is one of the most effective methods for supporting English learners. So that's kind of where we're at as a district in terms of our support for English learners and where we're going. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, Jillian, I had a question about you said we're doing the pull out in elementary because of COVID, scheduling, that's understandable. When we get to the other side of COVID, we're back in traditional scheduling. Will we be able to go straight into co-teaching, or will we need to transition and still do some pull out to make that transition?
Great question. So we are definitely, as we move back into in-person learning or limited in-person learning, we will be working on different schedules. So that will definitely be a factor. If we transition to fully in-person learning and there isn't that online component, the work that we're doing right now, particularly around professional learning and professional development that's going to be coming in the next couple months, is going to set our teachers, both our classroom general education teachers and our English language development specialists, up for success, because they're going to do a lot of professional learning around co-teaching and co-planning and how to actually do that piece. So I do anticipate that when we do come back to in-person learning, that is something that we'll be ready to transition to. And I think that on the benefit side is one of the pluses of having this time now, so that we can prepare and support our teachers and being ready to do that. So that will be something we will be transitioning to. I'm not sure that could happen this year with limited in-person learning, but if we get back to a full in-person learning program, I anticipate that being something we'd be able to accomplish.
Well, and you sort of answered, I think you answered my second question about what supports that teachers are getting. So this year, even with COVID, they're going to get some professional development around that co-teaching and blended or integrated teaching approach.
Yes, and for the last several years, students or teachers, particularly at the elementary level, have also engaged in GLAD training. And in this training, that is a 6-day professional learning experience where they spend 2 days training on instructional strategies and then 4 days observing a demonstration of those strategies and then creating their own units of instruction to support that. So we have approximately, I would say, just under 50% of our elementary teachers who've had this training, in addition to the specific training of co-teaching that we'll be doing later this year.
Jillian, I'm excited to hear that there's going to be a different approach, since numbers have been really just stagnant. So that's really good to hear. Are there, you said that the co-teaching has a bit of a track record in success. Are there other districts in the WESD that do that? Is it pretty well done, or is this kind of a newer thing?
I would say that a lot of districts are in the middle of transitioning to it. So I know that there's some pockets of it happening in McMinnville and Forest Grove and Canby. Woodburn has pockets of it. It's not fully integrated as like a complete program across all districts yet. I know there's specifically a school in Eugene that we've been collaborating with in terms of our programming and planning for, that has been engaging in it for the last 5 years, and I've seen a lot of results. We've also engaged in professional learning with the Northwest Regional ESD, and some of our partners out in Clackamas and that area are also engaging in it. So I would say there's definitely a variety of where people are at in terms of moving to co-teaching, but it seems like that is something everyone is moving towards.
Thank you. And I love that it frees up that other class period in the middle and high level for electives. That's awesome.
Well, and it really makes acquiring language a lot more relevant because students can apply it right there to their content learning. And on the other end of the spectrum are students who are on monitor status. So those are students who have scored proficient in language acquisition. Also will have additional support in the classroom where they're applying their language, which is also one of the things that we've seen at our secondary level, is that we have our students become proficient, but then they still need ongoing support in the application of language. And that's an area where we have some opportunities to support students. And so kind of to think about that breakdown, we have 258 students that are English learners. We have 230 students that qualify as migrant. And between those two contexts, we have 99 students that are both English learners and migrant students. But then when you look at our big picture in terms of the district, we have 658 students that are ever English learners. So these are students that could be currently identified or had formerly received services in the past. So that's like 13.6% of our population of students that are in that ever English learner category that are either receiving services or have received services. So really moving to the co-taught integrated model is going to support learning for all students and that vocabulary and language support.
Awesome. Are there any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, couple actually. You said that we had 100% in the reading and 98% in the math that grow. And you mentioned that there was like a 7% target. Is that, I mean, 7% of growth? Is that 100% meeting the 7% target? Is that what you're telling me?
So the 100%, yes, that is what I'm telling you. So the goal set by the ESC is that we will show at least a 7% growth point for all students. So we are saying with that 100%, that 100% of students met or exceeded that 7% growth goal.
Oh, that seems impressive. If the older students are making 7% and the younger students, it seems like it'd be harder the older you get to make 7%, but that sounds great. You also mentioned that the enrollments were down and that there was kind of seemed like a correlation with a particular need in the family that the kids have to support the family somehow. I'm assuming it might be jobs, it might be childcare, all kinds of things like that. Is there any, do you have any, what do I want to say? Any theories or hypotheses about whether those two factors are connected? That was there some way that maybe maybe students who find more challenge than other summers are more likely to be preoccupied with other things? I don't know what might be the case.
That's a great question. I can only say that school students in particular, when we would reach out and support them in attending their online classes and accruing that credit and really walking them through, like, here are the steps that you need to take to do this. One of the barriers that was frequently mentioned was, I am working. And so we had probably 2 or 3 students really accessing their learning at like 11, 12 o'clock at night. Kids were submitting assignments at 1 o'clock in the morning. So we definitely had students that were really working all hours of the day, either at work or working on their schoolwork.
Any other questions for Jillian? Okay, well, thank you. This is always one of the reports that I look forward to knowing more about, and I'm excited to see what kind of information we get for next year with these different approaches. Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
All right, let's take a 5-minute break. So 8:07, please be back, and we'll see you soon. I was just gonna say, well, Rebecca, it's 8:07. It looks like it's just you and me, but then Inez showed up, so maybe it's just the three of us. Let's give him another minute here. Oh, Rebecca, you were muted.
I am woman, hear me roar. The women showed up.
Good. Well, as soon as you said that, Brian, Bob, and Ron popped in, so they must have.
Okay.
And Dave, there's Dave. Good. All right, so let's get back in session here. Let's call us back to order. Okay, next up we have our Spanish translation for board meetings. There's Greg. Greg, are you set to chat about this?
Sure. I have nothing more to add other than what's in the packet at this point.
Okay, short and sweet. What are some thoughts around this from board members?
The main question I had was, what do we know? Do we have any functional difference between the 3 price points?
Greg, do you know?
Roughly, I mean, it's mainly from looking at the websites. The quotes are all for the same work. It's simultaneously translating stuff on Zoom. Just Spanish it looks like pretty much a one-person operation, and I think that's why they're lower. And she seems to be able to do that entire time herself, whereas the other ones seem more likely to bring in 2 translators and rotate them back and forth. The Verbio group, it's basically, it seems like it fits what you would expect. So it's kind of a one person for the Just Spanish PDX. The Verbio group is the largest group. They actually have all kinds of translations and translate 240 different languages. And so you're kind of paying for their experience of their whole organization, I think, at that point. There really was very little from the Propio group. I don't have much to add about that. I had a long conversation with the Verbio group translator who asked a lot of questions and had a lot of services that they could do. And they had the most detailed quote as far as what they would cover with that. I didn't go through the process of asking which of our own current staff would be willing to volunteer and be a part of doing that. So that quote is simply what would it cost us from the timesheet perspective. And as I put in the packet, it's unknown if we can meet that need in-house for the entire year, about whether they would want to volunteer to do that process.
What are some thoughts on this? Go ahead.
All along, I've been just thinking about the Spanish population, and that's obviously the people speaking Spanish is our biggest subgroup. But I think there's somebody say we have 13 different languages or something spoken in the district.
39.
Huh?
39 different languages, she said, didn't she?
39?
It's 29.
29, okay.
Look, if it's 13, it's fun. What are you doing there?
39.
Oh my. So the reason it came up for me by the Verbio, if they do more than Spanish, do we have a substantial group that might also need this besides the Hispanic population? I don't know what the third largest, most widely spoken language is and where we are with that.
I don't know the sizes of those groups, but we, as far as written materials, I'm not aware of us providing any materials in any other language. It's kind of on a, when they have those demands or those requests, we haven't had those coming out on a regular basis.
That's interesting because it could indicate that people just aren't aware that there's the availability of other translated material.
Well, or if you're only one of 3 or 4 and you're bilingual, you probably don't actually need it. But the Verbio's advantage of being a broader group would apply most relevantly if we think that we're pretty soon going to need to extend it to more than just the Hispanic population.
Bob, did you have a question or a comment?
I was just going to say, I'm hesitant to put more on our staff. There's part of it that's appealing to do it in-house, but with as much workload as there is within the district right now, I think this is something where it's worth contracting that out so that that burden isn't put on our staff. The one company, I think you said it was Just Spanish, who was only one person. Without knowing more about the company, I just a little bit hesitant about capacity. So, I tend to go for the middle priced option anyway. So that one's the most appealing to me.
I'm sorry, Bob, which one? The Propio is the middle, or the
Propio for $522 a month.
Greg, did you say that was the one that you didn't get as much information from, so we don't know if that's for one or two people?
Yeah, that's correct. Let me go see if I can look up what information it has. Just a moment.
So from what I gathered, looking at the 3 sites, Propio is very generic. Will do your translating. I do prefer to stay local. So initially I was like, okay, Spanish PDX, it's in Portland, local. Let's see what that's about. But I do think that one person doing this wouldn't work. Just from translating myself, it would be overwhelming for one person. Even though Verbio is the more comprehensive option, I don't know if all the data is there in terms of could we get the best bang for our buck. But I also don't want to burden our current staff. However, I do believe that we should ask instead of assuming that they wouldn't want to take this opportunity. So that's where I'm at.
Greg, when you priced out the current staff, were you assuming one staff member would be doing it, or were you assuming 2?
I was assuming 2.
Okay.
Is there a minimum contract length with any of these 3 companies?
No, there is not.
Okay, so we could do like a month trial or a 2-month trial to see if it worked for us.
Yes, I believe so.
Greg, how many people have requested this?
It primarily came up from our discussions at the board. You've heard them all as much as I have. It's been a part of our board meetings with different board members and public comment making those requests.
So I guess I didn't answer my question. Does anybody have an answer to that one?
I don't think that anybody has specifically reached out to the district and said, please offer Spanish translation services at board meetings. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, we had one public comment from David Jaimez that asked for it, and from our directors, Director Woodruff and Director Pena requested it.
And I'll let you know, I mean, this is an anecdotal experience, but I went to the Mountain View parent group meeting a couple of years ago, and it was very sparsely attended. I mean, if you took out me and the 2 administrators, I think there were 3 parents there. When I went about a month ago, there was like 25 and a translator. So I really was a really clear example to me that if you remove barriers, more people tend to access services.
I was just thinking, like, for a lot of the adults out there that would want to attend and be able to follow the meeting in their native language, I totally get that. Knowing that we have a lot of dual language speakers on our staff, a lot of our people, say in athletics, like to coach. They get a stipend for coaching, and it seems like out in our community, maybe another bang for our buck. If we don't have that many requests for the school board meeting, if we had staff members, if we were going to put money out there, what about going for English classes, second language for adults, in our district, so they could whatever school would work. And we could open up something there where instead of just, a couple people at a school board meeting, we could get hundreds learning and catching up on a language that would help them overall in their life rather than just a school board meeting. If we don't have that many requests, we could impact a lot more people.
Yeah, I think creating adult education programs is a great idea, and that's something we can think about as a board if we want to move forward and how we would do that. Getting this translation out to folks now, Inez has a good point. Maybe I was being overly cautious and protective of our staff, but it's a good point to reach out and ask if folks feel like they have that time capacity to do that. Certainly that's the most cost effective. Like I said, I worry about folks.
Well, I think on that one, I agree, because I've heard a lot of staff being really tired, Bob. At the same time, a lot of people do coach or take on extracurricular activities because they need the money. Our staff, especially younger staff, if they need the dollars, that's why a lot of people do take on those stipend type contracts. They may really want to do it because they need the dollars. So it ends up being a win-win.
So I'm right now I'm thinking that maybe that we need to try this. I don't think we can tell how many people it's going to serve just by how many people have asked for it, because if it hasn't really come up, why would anybody know they were supposed to ask for it? And we switched to these Zoom meetings without asking anybody because we had to, and it turned out to change because things became available, and it's actually changed our relationship in a significant way to the community. So I'd like to try this, whether we get demand or not. And the idea that we don't have to sign on for a year contract or something like that, make that big a commitment. I would try it more than a couple of weeks. I'd try it for 3 months or something so that the word can get out and we can see what really would happen. And the same thing applies to who we'd use. And if we can get good translation at the same price using people in our district who want to do it, I'd rather do it that way. There's two variables there, or three maybe. Can we get as good a translation? I mean, it's a little different if you do it professionally, I think, than if you're just doing it because you're knowledgeable in the language. There's a skill to translation, and not every fluent person could translate. I would have trouble translating from English to English if you were asking me to do it. So somebody might not be able to do it as otherwise a fluent person. So that's an issue, the quality. There are other issues in there too, but right now I'd be leaning towards, let's say, go ahead, let's see if we can find some people in the district who want this position, who would see this as an advantage to them and their families, so they're committed to doing the entire meeting. I don't know what we should offer them. It should be competitive, but it doesn't necessarily have to be over any of these. We might even save a little money. And me not being like Bob, who takes the middle, I'm always drawn to the cheapest. And so maybe it could be even cheaper. I don't know. I don't want to abuse anybody. But I think if we could have a pair of people every day, at a couple of meetings, try it for a few meetings and see how it's going and whether people appreciate it, and we get some people that otherwise wouldn't come, and then we can reevaluate it.
Can I ask what the scope of this service that we're contracting for is?
Basically, all the quotes come on a per hour basis. And so what I was estimating was 3-hour meeting 2 times a month. And the scope of it is to provide simultaneous translation rather than consecutive. So it doesn't change the board meeting. Consecutive translation requires speaking in English for a while and then a pause while translation occurs. These are all quotes for simultaneous so that the board meeting can just happen as it is and the translator will translate as it goes.
So it'll be translated in real time as we're having our meetings.
Yes.
How will that work? Is there a separate feed for the Spanish language version, or how?
Yeah, we did this one time this summer with the elementary informational setting on session on CDL. There's a way in Zoom to set up people ahead of time as an interpreter. And then when people log in, there's a globe at the bottom where they click the language they want to hear from. And basically they hear the audio feed. If they choose the Spanish one, it defaults to English, but if they choose the Spanish one, they will hear the audio feed from the person who was doing the translation.
Okay, thank you.
And I do want to be really cautious about us expecting that we'll have staff volunteer for it, because it turns it into a 12-hour day or longer for people, and we would be paying them at their normal rate. Additionally, interpreting live interpretation is different than just being able to speak Spanish. Interpretation is a skill. It is not easy. It is exhausting. So we'd have to guarantee to have 2 people on, because it's a long, challenging thing. So it's just, I want us to be really cautious on counting on that. I think we could certainly ask, but we also want to make sure that we're not wiping people out, because this will be additional contract hours. It won't be a stipend. They would be paid their hourly rate, and things like that. So I just want to throw that out there, that I don't want us to pin all of our hopes on just internal people doing it, because it is a skill. It is extra long hours. So
It's saying local. I wasn't assuming they'd all have to be staff. Maybe other people in the locality. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from the board is that we are interested in exploring local/district employee option. Greg, is there something that I can, or another board member could do to help support facilitating that outreach?
I'm glad to ask the folks who normally do that. I don't know quite, I heard a little bit of discussion in there about sort of quality, or how, what that will be. I don't have a way of evaluating that, nor would I know how that process would work. That might be more of a Joe question or a Nikki question of, are there, I don't know if there's union stipulations of how we offer this work or things like that, but I'm glad to do the legwork of asking our folks if that's what the board would desire. And I don't know if Joe, if you have anything to add on that.
Yeah, we would have to, we'd actually have to post it, and then choose somebody or somebodies if we had to do that, if we wanted to schedule them. Or we go with one of these other groups that's already given us a quote, because we do have to go out for a bid. So we can either do it that way, or we can provide additional hours.
And will we be able to tell with these services how many people are actually availing themselves of the service during the meeting?
That is a good question that I'm not sure I have the answer to. I don't remember looking this summer.
I think the way it worked is that you see them as regular attendees to the meeting. We don't really know who is listening to what.
But does it save both audio tracks to
Yeah.
YouTube for then replay afterwards?
What we did learn last time is it doesn't do that when you record straight to the cloud. So we have to do that from the computer to make sure we get both feeds. But I'm in the same boat as Ines. I don't know of a way to determine who accessed that feed or not. I can do some research on that.
Okay, because it'll be hard to evaluate whether we're getting, any value out of it without that information.
So as a board, what do we want our next step to be?
Is there any,
Go ahead, Dave, you go.
well, I'm sorry, is there any way to kind of reach out to our Hispanic community and find out what they would prefer, as far as in terms of, I'm not trying to be too silly here, but it's not like the school board meetings are, watching a great movie. They can be a little bit boring. So, how many people, is that what they really want to do? Or is there a better way to help them out if there was like a translation that would come out afterwards? And then if we did offer classes or some type of a way, I'd probably sign up for the classes if we had a class to learn Spanish. So I'm just thinking, again, what would be the best thing for the people in the community? Because our meetings are kind of dry and they're kind of boring and they're kind of what they are. They're school board meetings. So it's not like we're having them watch a high school play that's really fun. I'm just thinking, what would they really like to have?
We've got a lot of English folks who, English speaking folks who are interested in our meetings. I don't see any reason why folks who have Spanish as their primary language wouldn't also be interested.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not gonna speak for all of the Hispanic community in Newberg and in this district, but I am gonna speak on my experience and attending the Latinx parent meetings. And we do, I think at the last one, there was what, 35 participants. So they are well attended. People do care about their children's education. So I don't see, yeah, this might be boring, but it's information that people should know and be aware of.
Joe, what would be a realistic time frame if we were to, post it, do this internally, from telling you to start the process to posting it to having a meeting translated? What would be a realistic timeline to get that process in place?
Probably a month. I mean, if we were talking about a month from now. I mean, your other option is to go with one of these services for one meeting to see how it goes. You may also, I mean, that might be something that I was just thinking about our own people. If we have people who are interested in doing it, they may want to watch and make sure that they actually do want to do that after listening to the stream and feel that they're, up to par. And so, I see the Propio one is in there at $261. It's not going to break the bank to try it for $260 and see what happens in one of them, and then just do a test run. And then it won't change the meeting here. It'll just allow access to other people. And in that time frame, I could probably find out if we have volunteers, and then that way they could actually listen for the next one and then see if they're interested in still doing it or not, because it could be a little intimidating. They could be totally ready to do it, but that way you could start the process, see how it works. We could, if we have employees who'd like to do it, they would also kind of get a view in, and then we can make a decision to follow it. So you don't really have to decide necessarily. We could just go ahead and provide this at our next meeting for a fairly inexpensive cost. I mean, inconsequential really, and then see how it goes from there. So we don't have to get into, I don't believe, Greg, and correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have to get into a major contract and all of this. We could just say, we need your services. We can schedule them for the next meeting.
Yes, and one thing I should add is that the Propio quote came through WESD, so I have not had direct contact myself with Propio, so I would have to go through that process to make sure they can do that. I mean, I assume they can, but I just wanted to be transparent about how I got that information.
I like that better because I think I want this service to be available as soon as possible. And if we can do the investigating of in-house, but still offer something in the meantime, that's the route I would want to go.
Okay, so let's do this. I will, we'll contact them for the next meeting. We'll get them going. We'll work on the other process to see what if we have employees who want to do that. And if we do, or if we don't, we'll bring that back to the meeting after the next one. And then you can make a decision on which way we want to go.
Is there a reason we wouldn't try the cheaper one first?
Because it's only one person and it's overwhelming for 3 hours to do simultaneous translating.
And I'm quite convinced that one person would have a real problem being continuous and stuff would get lost, from what little experience I've had with that. If the Propio person is only one person, then I'm not that excited about that either. But if they're going to send two, then I think they're the right one, because they're the cheapest that have two. That's music to my ears. So.
Yeah, and that may be, as Greg said, an ESD rate as well, right? So they're able to lower that cost. So we'll get a little better information on that one, and we'll have we'll attempt to have a stream ready to go for this next meeting, as long as we can schedule somebody in for the next one.
Have we priced out what it would be to get our minutes translated? It seems like
no, we haven't.
Solution.
We haven't done that. Some of these quotes that I've pulled up, like Propio, their document translation is 13 cents a word. So I think that would get quite spendy.
Also, I think there's something to be said for attending a meeting or watching it live, you do tend to pick up a lot more and feel more connected, I think, than just reading, minutes that aren't transcripts.
The other thing too is not everybody can read. We used to do a program through the district. Well, maybe it was in partnership with the Welcome Center, INEA, which was adult education for parents to get their elementary and middle school education out of the way because they didn't even know how to read. So that would be another obstacle.
Yeah, I think that having them in the meeting, now that we're having attendance, I want that barrier removed if we can remove it economically. Having minutes also, I mean, on top of that, not at 13 cents a word. I don't think we can afford that. There must be a cheaper way, but that would be nice too. But that's a separate question, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, certainly that would be a great second step to explore how to provide those in addition. But, I think I agree with Joe that going with one of these companies, and like I said, I prefer Propio because they've got the lowest price at 2 people, would be a good first step. I'd be willing to make a motion that we try it out for a month for 2 meetings.
That was my next question, Bob.
Second that motion.
Okay, motion in a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And it passes unanimously.
Good.
All right, I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes and seeing if we have any local interest to do that. Thank you, Greg, for doing the research on that and bringing it to the board. All right, next up, we have our superintendent and board working agreement, which was our focus of our 30-minute work session prior to the board meeting. Greg, you have a copy of that since you're on the shared document. Will that be enough for the minutes? Since it's not in the
yes.
packet? Okay.
Yeah, normally in the past, I have not put it into the actual minutes. I've had it as a separate item available.
Perfect. That sounds good. It just feels weird to vote on something that's not in the packet, right? But it is. All right. Is there any other questions around that? I would entertain a motion.
I'll move that the Newberg School District Board of Directors approve the superintendent and board working agreement as amended.
I'll second.
Okay, the motion and second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And it passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody, for coming 30 minutes early tonight, too, so that we could get that done. That's good. All right, so next up, we've got discussion of board professional topics. So board members, of course, remember, and for those of you watching at home, last year we focused on some specific educational topics for our board since we had a couple of new members. And this year, since we don't have new members, Ron and I met with Joe and Greg, of course, for our agenda and discussed more sort of a professional development approach versus an education approach. So does anybody have any topics or two that they would like to share as far as areas that we can potentially approach professional development?
The one that kind of I'm itching to learn more about, I feel remiss that I haven't learned and done more about it, is curriculum adoption. I'd like to learn more about, what our schedule is, what policies, what statutes are around curriculum adoption. Kind of with my personal ultimate goal, I'd like us to do with policy, or with curriculum, what we did with our ending fund balance, and have a policy that really holds our feet to the fire, that we're staying on track with our policy rotations.
Oh, Ron, you're muted.
I was unmuted that whole time. I didn't take advantage. Since I got on the board, the first question I had was, we're responsible for the board's finances, for the district's finances. And we only ever can get, and I'm not blaming anybody for this, but it just seems like we can only ever get a very top level analysis. And if somebody were stealing from the district, we would never see it. I don't know how we'd see it, or something like that. I don't think it's our job to go around and make sure nobody's stealing from the district, but it's something we're responsible for, and we just don't have a lot of levers. I don't know what the levers are, so I'd like to have some kind of a education on what's doable, what can board members expect to do, and how would they get better at doing what they're expecting to do. I do think that the board, my first 4 or 5 years on the board, when we didn't have an ending fund balance policy, that was irresponsible, and I was uncomfortable about it the whole time, but I didn't know what my options were. So I just kind of grumbled every year when we didn't put more away and didn't get anything done on it. And that wasn't very effective. So I'd like something about that. How deep should we go? I mean, probably not. I don't know how that works. What should we look for? What are the hallmarks that we should be paying attention to? Whatever. Okay.
I think that's a really good one. You know, my gut is that, you know, a lot of what you're saying about, you know, we'd never know if folks were stealing. That's what our audit does for us. But learning more about how to parse the budget, dial down deeper, you know, I think that's a great topic.
Sort of a related note to those, I would really like us to start looking more at the situation with PERS, because I kind of feel like we're whistling past the graveyard with that. It's a big looming iceberg that our ship is headed towards, and I think we need to start taking it more seriously and looking at it.
Yeah, that.
You muted yourself.
I agree. I agree with that that concern. I've been worried about it since I've been on the board about a year and realized the PERS problem. And the legislature's been helping us dodge it, but they're mostly kicking it down the road. And somebody on this board might still be there when it all hits it, and we'd be nice to be prepared.
I hate to be the one to bring this up, but I do think that we still need to dig deeper in our implicit bias work, just in how we carry out these meetings.
Rebecca or Dave, do you have any suggestions? Dave, bless you, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I don't know if this fits in there like that, but it's kind of like what Ron was saying, like diving deeper into stuff. Sorry. I would like to know, ooh, can I excuse out?
Yeah, no problem. Rebecca, do you have any thoughts of areas you'd like to get a little more education on, or professional development?
I would like to see more information about the reasons why students are leaving our district. And I don't, just that we get deeper down to understanding if there is something chronically wrong, or the perception of what we're not, why we're not hitting the marks for people.
Okay. Dave, you back? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I like Ron said, diving deeper. It's a really tough one because being at the school for so long, you get close and a lot of the staff, and I guess I would really like to know more of. I think there are most valuable workers, our teacher staff and our ed assistants. I mean, I know everybody else, our district staff and everybody's important, but knowing what's really going on with our teachers, I mean, and it's a hard one to do because if you speak up in a meeting, I just know that I've seen people really reluctant to speak up because of the pecking order at the school. And I would just like to really hear the real stories, what our staff are going through, because it's not to make an administrator look bad or the district office to look bad. It's just to be a better school district. So instead of the fear factor in there, I think we need to unlock the ability for our staff to speak to the board so we can speak to Joe and the district staff. I mean, Joe, so he can speak to his staff. I don't know how to make that happen, but it's something as a board I wish we could discuss to really unlock what's really going on, because we have some fantastic teachers in this district who really care. And as a board member, I'd like to help and serve them the best way possible. And if somebody gets their feelings hurt over that on a school board or in a district office, then okay, I'm okay with that. If our staff was really getting what they need to be amazing and not getting burnt out, not being fearful to say what they got to say, and just help them the best way possible from the board's perspective, not necessarily the district office's perspective. So that was mine. And I agree with Rebecca too. I think it's a big one, totally, that we need to find that answer, because there are people doing that. And as tough as it is to hear those tough stories, we got to hear those stories so we can be better.
When I was thinking of areas that I'd like some more professional development in, I was referring back to our board goals. And in our goal A, we have a couple of action items in there that I think we could focus on since they're our goals. One of them is conduct focused listening groups. And another one is board development, education focused on individual and group growth, and also creating an equity lens to be used as a tool in board decisions. So that's sort of where my head was. Do we want to approach it like last year where we, as a group, narrowed it down, or do we want to try to get sort of everybody's individual items kind of on the agenda throughout the year? What are some thoughts on that?
Brandy, I think if everybody brought it up in this meeting, it's important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Might not be important to somebody else on the board, but if somebody brought it up, that's how they feel. I think they, we might not have to spend a whole month on it or something like that, but we could at least, bring it up, because I think everybody brought up something that's on their heart.
Yeah.
I think it worked very well to have it throughout the agendas of the year. So we could have it like that. That would be
okay. Something. Well, I took notes of everybody's, and when Ron and I and Joe and Greg meet again for our next agenda meeting, maybe we can discuss it and kind of start to parse it out a little bit and see where it might fit in the agendas for the rest of the school year. Everyone's comfortable with that. Okay. Rebecca, did you have a question or comment?
Well, I was just realizing that most of our professional development will involve the district supporting the district office. And I want to acknowledge the workload they're under, and that we work with them on how to get this knowledge to us.
Yeah, that's a really good reminder. I think we, as a board, we're pretty good about this, and I think we should continue to always kind of come from that place of, really being aware of how our work affects the district staff as well. And some of these for sure we can bring in outside facilitators, which we haven't really done much of because we didn't have our normal summer board retreat that is usually facilitated. And because we focused on sort of in-district education pieces last year, we also didn't really have any board training from outside facilitators. So I can also work with Nikki and see kind of what our budget is and what that would look like, again, spread out through the year. If there's various ones, like, for example, implicit bias work, for sure we would have to hire somebody to come in for that. So there could be some like that, a bit of a mix of in-house and also facilitated.
I also know that a lot of our public comments gave recommendations of things that we should learn and do. So that's something to look back at. I would like us to look back at.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think we'd probably find some themes in there too. Yeah. Okay, any other thoughts on this? No? All right. And let's look ahead at, I was going to say next month's meeting, but it's not. It's still going to be October. So let's look ahead at that one, or at our future agendas. So we'll get our monthly financial report from Nikki on the 27th, our final bond update before the election, Division 22 assurances, our enrollment report, student achievement report, and we'll discuss those board professional development topics. And also, Dave, no, oh, I wrote it down. Dave, were you thinking of something on the next agenda? What did you bring up? Oh, the bringing board meetings back in person. That's it. I think we should put that as a discussion item on our next agenda so that we can have that discussion as a board. Okay. Well, with that, we are.
Wait a minute. We have a half an hour left in the meeting. What are we
I
gonna
know. I was like, we're like 28 minutes early. So that's pretty impressive. Way to be very concise and orderly tonight, everyone.
I could maybe come up with 20 minutes of questions. Anybody want me to?
Nope, we're going to go now. Bye, Ron.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I'll adjourn. Have a good night.
Right.